Good evening, everyone. I am Talisha Shine. I am a founding member and the admin here at the 10K Project. We are a thriving community of investors who fund and support Black-owned businesses and startups, as well as we are the go-to resource for all things alternative investments through wealth building. And this evening, we are joined by Ms. Aja Atwood of Trella Technologies, who I see every day because I follow you on Instagram. So she's going to tell us all about herself. For some of you who may not have known her, she did a pitch for us on the Bet on Black pitch last May, which seems like almost a year ago, but it just seems like it was almost yesterday. I know, and you're muted. So she's going to tell us more about her background. She's going to tell us about Trella Technologies, what it is and what it does. And also she's going to tell us about her latest coaching course. I believe it's a coaching challenge and a course and everything that you want to know. So she's going to tell us all about that. So welcome back, Ms. Aja, to the 10K Project.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to talk about this topic. I can really go in today.
And we want you to. So if you guys have any questions for her, please feel free to put them into the chat and we will just say, so let us just introduce yourself and tell us all the good stuff and make sure you do tell us your background because I love that story that tells us a lot about you.
Sure thing. You mind if I share my screen?
Sure.
All right. Put together some stuff to keep me on task here.
Okay. You got it. You can do whatever you need
to help me. All right. You should be able to see full screen now.
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. Excellent. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this topic and how to grow your own cannabis. Now, if you're interested in this topic, it could be for a couple of different reasons. It could be because you are looking to grow for yourself for medicinal reasons, or maybe you're even looking to actually get into the industry from a commercial perspective to gain some generational wealth. And definitely there's opportunities and the ability is there, in both cases. But if we don't go at this in a particular manner, it is my fear that we will lose control of this opportunity and we will wind up repeating some of the same mistakes that we've unfortunately repeated in the past. And so the topic today is how to grow your own cannabis and take control in this $1 trillion industry. Not just get in it, but get in it, thrive in it, and have a positive impact on it too, on your health and what you're trying to do when it comes to building a legacy. So what I want to do today is talk about a few different things. We're going to kind of go through this journey today. I'm going to talk about my past because that explains why I'm talking about this and why I'm so concerned and why I'm so, kind of jazzed up today. And then I'm also going to talk about, and that will lead me into the 3 reasons why we need to grow our own. I'll share more about the why on that. And then the bulk of the time we're going to spend today is how do you get started? Because this isn't just about telling you about why you need to grow. It's about giving you the tools and getting you started so that you can grow on your own and not just get started, but also succeed. Because you can start growing, but a lot of people start and then they fall off. So there's got to be some sort of a support system, some sort of framework to help you succeed because we're all busy and we all have, a ton of different things that are drawing and pulling at our attention. And then we'll end it with a Q&A so I really go into more detail on anything that maybe I kind of had to skim over. There's a lot in here. I packed a lot in here. I'm going to try to stay on pace, on topic, but please, stick around because that part about learning how to grow your own is going to be really informative. You're going to get a lot of good information there. But just to share a little bit about my background, before cannabis, I was what's called a risk engineer. So a risk engineer is an engineer that goes out to different industrial complexes, different facilities. It could be power plants, hospitals, manufacturing plants, universities, just anything that has a lot of value in one location. Risk engineers go out and try to figure out how can you protect that thing. And over that time, I really got into natural catastrophes and trying to help people protect their assets from natural catastrophe damage. And I saw a lot of stuff. I saw some things that were incredibly concerning in regards to the strength of our country's infrastructure when it comes to natural catastrophes. For example, I had the opportunity because I became a kind of a subject matter expert for the company, to go to Tulane University after Hurricane Katrina to learn a little bit about what happened, what caused those levees to fail. And there were so many different things that were coming out, but they actually put together a research team and they did a presentation at Tulane. And one of the things that they talked about was the fact that the parts of the levee were actually designed correctly on paper, but the way that it was constructed, the way that it was actually built, was not the way that it was written on paper. Incorrect materials were used, things weren't quite, dug deep enough, and then the levee walls failed, in addition to some other things. And it really got me thinking about, the codes that we use to build things. We use, things that are called minimum building codes to build things. And when you build on the minimum, you're going to get the minimum. So it's not really 100% a surprise that some of our infrastructure is failing the way that it has over time. But and then later on, about 2019, when I was transitioning out of risk engineering and getting into cannabis, I learned that the American Society of Civil Engineers began removing levee data information that was publicly available. It was publicly available for years. I used it as a resource when I was training engineers and helping them learn how to do what I was doing. They all of a sudden, one year I could get access to it, next year I could not. I actually called the guy and asked him what happened. And he's mid-level engineers, and he's like, I can't really explain it, but it's been removed and you need to be an owner of the levee in order to get that information. So they're pulling data away that's very important and vital to the ability for us to kind of protect ourselves, protect our livelihood, protect our food system, our medicine. All of those things are tied together when we talk about infrastructure. So that's one of the things that really got me the most concerned. Then when I transitioned away from risk engineering and said, I really want to get into the cannabis space, that was a process. That wasn't something that I just made the decision to do overnight. I had started looking at the cannabis space in about 2013. I started to learn about the medicinal properties for myself. As an athlete, I had a lot of injuries. So I was kind of, medicating myself and doing a lot of Advil, ibuprofen, staying away from heart pain meds, but just not getting the relief I need. So cannabis really helped me out with that. And as I started to learn more about the cannabis space and the opportunity, I said, I wonder how I can get into this from an engineering perspective and not really be, a taker of the industry. So I started getting into activism, going to meetings, community meetings, and trying to shape the actual legislation in Massachusetts about how to be able to cultivate. So if you're looking to get into the industry, one of the things that I strongly recommend is that you try to add value from an activism perspective and get to understand the community from the grassroots level versus trying to come in it as, some of these corporate entities that are not doing very well right now. If you've been looking at the news in the cannabis space, there have been several companies that have closed down plants, locations. For example, one large company is Curaleaf. There's another company called TrueLeaf. These companies that are big and operating at scale across multiple states, they came at it the wrong way. They came at it from the typical big pharma perspective, and that's just not quite working out. Kind of some advice there for you if you're looking to get into the space. But I started to try to figure out how to learn, how to grow on my own. I made a lot of mistakes. I tried to do it all by myself. I bought some books, read some books, and just really had a, kind of information overwhelmed, didn't know where to get started. So then I decided to take a course, actually go to a classroom course. This is before COVID, when you actually had group education and, a lot more. And I went to an 8-week course, driving 1 hour once a week to learn how to grow. And I learned a lot of information, but I just didn't walk away with what I needed to get started and to keep me kind of on track. So it took me 2 years, unfortunately, to figure out how to grow efficiently, how to grow, healthy plants to the point where I no longer had to go to the dispensary anymore. I stopped having to do that in about 2018. And it also created the opportunity for me to, from an engineering perspective, to be inventive, to be creative. And that's when we developed our Trella LST, which is our automated horizontal plant training system. So I'll talk a little bit about that, about plant training and the importance of that, because that's how you get the most yield per plant. And you can see the picture in the middle. That was a plant that was grown with our horizontal plant training system. It's a 6-foot long plant. And that's all just one plant that you're looking at right there. So there's different ways to come at this. this from I think, a spiritual perspective, from a financial perspective, from a creative perspective. There's a lot of space here in this industry, but I just think we need to be intentional about how we're coming at it. So I decided, at one point to, this is actually not decided at one point. It was a while. I've been pushing this off for a while, trying to figure out a way to help with education. I had some training, I had experience training engineers and non-engineers, all types of people in the past, in my past corporate life, but I wanted to figure out how can I help people grow their own, because I see people that want to get into this and they just don't know where to start. For some of you that may have tried this, you may have gone out to some community forums and just seen that there aren't people that look like you, that speak like you, that have the intentions that you have. There's something for everyone. So I decided, hey, I'm going to throw Trella's hat in the ring and create an educational framework that we can use to help people learn how to grow their own. So we launched that in December, just last year, December 2022. We had really good results. We had over a 50% completion rate in our online course, which is actually really amazing, because if you Google the typical completion rate of an online course, you're going to find out that it's like 10% or 15%. And we started, and did good with 50%. So we're looking to continue that and to add some momentum behind that as well. So I wanted to then transition into why do you need to grow your own? There are three main reasons that I like to focus on. The first is like my initial why. This is kind of my perspective when I first entered the industry. Was the earth is changing. I'm a natural disaster risk engineer. I understand what's been happening over time. I've seen the impact that it has on, our agriculture. You can talk about, Ian that just came through and wreaked havoc on Florida's agriculture. We've got, situations where we're having power outages and tsunamis, and all these things impact our agriculture. We also have man-made disasters that we have to, deal with, such as, for example, one of the most recent ones, we had Flint, Michigan, but even more recent, Jackson, Mississippi. That was a kind of a combination of a natural disaster and an infrastructure failure that I like to call a man-made disaster. So there was flooding that happened in Mississippi, a lot of rain. The pumps for the water supply company weren't not adequately maintained. They failed. Water pressure dropped, and the water became contaminated. And they're still to this day trying to fix this issue. And even though they've got some funding and there's been some movement, they're expecting it to take 10 years to upgrade the infrastructure so that people have clean drinking water in the city of Jackson, Mississippi. Flint's still dealing with issues. There's issues kind of in every state, and they actually kind of are more prevalent in our farming states, because those are less funded from a state perspective. And also there are issues in regards to the failing infrastructure there. And also having a lot of pesticides that are being used in farming, and then it starts to rain and there's pesticides that can't get removed properly. So there's a lot of issues when it comes to the changes that we're experiencing and how prepared we are to manage those that are going to impact not just our food, but also your cannabis. A lot of people may not think about that, but the same water supply that they're growing food with, they're going to be growing cannabis with. In the same areas and in the same geography. So these things are across the board. They don't just impact one thing, they impact several. So the next thing that got me kind of all jazzed up and worried and really motivated to keep learning how to grow my own was, what the are we consuming? What's in this stuff? When I first got into the industry, there were concerns about how they were going to craft the lab testing regulations in order to test cannabis. So just to give you a little bit of background, on a state-by-state basis, every time a new state comes online, they craft a set of regulations. And those regulations are usually, or always actually, are stipulations on how to test the product to make sure that it's quote unquote safe. In most cases, the people that test them are actually, they are for-profit entities that apply for a license to be a lab testing facility. So they have, similar to most traditional corporations that are for-profit, they have a mission to make money, to make profit. And if they're getting clients if their clients are farmers that are saying, hey, last time I sent you a product and you gave me a really low score or a bad score. You know, for example, the very first thing that I'm showing here on my screen, let me just show here, is this title here, Cannabis Companies Inflating THC Numbers. THC is the part that's the psychoactive part of the plant. It's called a cannabinoid. The plant has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different cannabinoids, and we seem to only really focus on like 20 of them for some reason. But the entire plant is what creates the experience, not just the THC. I digress. Going back to the THC numbers being really being inflated, the more THC, the more people can charge. So there's an incentive for people to want to have high THC numbers from their lab testing results. So if I'm a lab and someone comes back and says, you know, you gave me like 15% and I think it should be more like 20, I'm going to take my testing somewhere else and pay somebody else to do it. Some labs that are, you know, trying to make money and don't have good intentions are going to unfortunately do the wrong thing and inflate those THC numbers, and they're getting caught. You can see online people saying they've got THC counts of 50%. This is insane. It's not even realistic. And in some cases, the regulations that are crafted for testing allow for a 10%, what is it? I'm sorry, a 10% difference, plus or minus error. So you could say, hey, I tested for 10%, but I've got another 10% of error that I'm allowed to have. So you could bump it up to 20%, charge more money, make more money, and that's kind of what's been happening here. California then tried to, on the second one here, they tried to go in and create a state mandated, a state controlled, a state run lab that will test all the cannabis in California. That's nice. That's a good step in direction, I guess, to try to get some kind of uniformity about it, but around it. But one of the issues that I have with other state, led testing facilities is the fact that they have to create this framework, this regulation as well. And what they've been doing is looking at pesticide use that we typically already have on our fruits and our vegetables. So they'll say something like, all right, well, you can use this pesticide to grow tomatoes and melons, and it hasn't been causing any issues. We'll use a similar limit of pesticides. There's a limit of pesticides that are allowed. So we'll use that same limit for cannabis. The issue, though, for me is when we're talking about chemicals and pesticides on a tomato, I can wash that tomato, I can soak it in some apple cider vinegar, get all those chemicals off, and feel better about consuming that tomato that I bought from a store. But when it comes to cannabis, flower, a product that's already been kind of manufactured, you can't do that. And furthermore, when you add heat to a chemical, it changes the composition. And what do we do when we consume cannabis and we manufacture a gummy or a cookie or something like that? You heat it first. You always have to include heat in order to consume cannabis. So that's a step that you can't jump over. You're going to change the chemical composition of these pesticides. And I just don't feel like we have enough information, enough history to really say what the appropriate limits are, especially when we're heating it, inhaling it, or ingesting some of these changed pesticides. So you've got these issues that are really, this is the one that's been really pushing me to tell people to grow our own, is we don't know what we're consuming, and we need to understand that. And there's no better way to understand what you're consuming than to grow it yourself, to know what you're putting into it. And even if you're not just growing for yourself, if you're growing for a community that you're trying to protect or you're trying to help heal, you know what you're doing and you have ownership. If you make a mistake, it's on you, versus letting that, relying on another entity, a for-profit entity, to do the right thing for us. I don't think that that's a smart move. That's unfortunately been something that we've done in the past and with traditional medicine, and is getting us in trouble. So moving on to the next topic of the reason why we should grow our own is because we have the opportunity to make a positive impact on this industry. And I really feel like that in order to really have a positive impact and to understand the complexities of this plant, what it takes to grow it, what it takes to make a high quality product that will deliver consistent results is not the same as just creating Tylenol or aspirin. This plant is very complex. It has a lot of different cannabinoid profiles. A lot of, what works for one person won't work the same for the next person. What worked for you when you were hydrated will not work the same for you when you're dehydrated. It won't work the same when you're tired versus when you're rested. I mean, these things, this is a very complex plant. And in order to really create a situation, a sustainable situation where you fully understand the complexities, you know, you know, what to expect, how to grow it, how it's going to change, how it's going to impact, you know, your patients or your community's lives. You got to really learn the plant, and there's no better way to do that than to grow it yourself. I mean, we have an opportunity to create safe access and to make sure that we don't create the same situation. You know, I know, you know, in the past we've had this already happened. I grew up, I was born in 79, in South Philadelphia. So around the time when I was 6 or 7 years old, that was the crack epidemic. There was the movement. I mean, I grew up in a time where I don't really have a lot of respect and trust in government entities to do what's best for me. Some of you may be there, some of you may not, but I just want to be clear about my perspective is I've seen things that don't really make me feel like relying on some resource from an external part of the community is actually going to do what's right for us. I mean, we saw how they flooded our streets with crack and then got people hooked and then sent them to jail. To me, this commercial cannabis industry, to some extent, is just a horse of a different color. We don't, you know, it comes at from a different perspective. It's supposed to be healing and holistic. But if you're just getting this from somebody that's outside of the community, you're creating the same risk scenario for yourself of being, you know, kind of manipulated by what you're ingesting. So for that purpose, you know, grow your own, to be safe, to have a safe community and make sure that we're reducing that risk. And then there's also the opportunity to do this at the local level, creating co-ops. Co-ops are great business models for something like this. This is health, this is food, this isn't, you know, another industry. And to have all the stakeholders, all the shareholders at the table making decisions that impact a small localized community, in my opinion, is the best way to move forward. So for those of you that are interested in getting in this from a commercial perspective, look at your state's regulations and see if they allow for co-op licensing. Most states do. In my state, Massachusetts, they do. You can be a co-op, a group of farmers get together and they can grow and supply their local community. So definitely look into that if you're interested in coming at it from a commercial perspective. All right, now let's get into it. How am I doing on time? All right, I'll speed it up a little bit. How do you get started? How do you get started? This is going to be the crux of it. The first thing is to figure out, is it legal? Is it legal where you are? I have a list of right here, a map of all of the different states in the US that allow for home cultivation, either for a medicinal purpose or for a recreational purpose. And they allow you to grow at home a certain amount of plants. So here are all the states. If you don't see your state there, please don't get, what do I want to say? Don't get discouraged that your state isn't here. One, you can always become an activist and push for your state to be added to this list. Two, partner up with somebody. Partner up with somebody that's in a different state that actually is on this list and say, yo, what do you think about us partnering and we can grow at where you live or where you have some space or some property? There's plenty of people that live in Texas that grow in Oklahoma. That's been really, really, really prevalent in Oklahoma, is that there's people from Texas driving to Oklahoma or partnering with people in Oklahoma to grow their own. So be creative with this. Washington, I have a question mark beside that. Unfortunately, I just learned about like 30 minutes before I jumped on this call that the Washington state regulations are maybe pushing back and rolling back home cultivation. They know that this is a chance for us to take our own health into our hands. This plant is dynamic. If we can figure out what to do with this at the local level, grow it ourselves, figure out how to gift it to people and do it in a legal way so that we're not allowing them some space to come in and destroy what we're creating, you know, it can be done. So in order to get started, I'm going to kind of lead you through some of the things, some questions that people usually have when they're looking to grow their own and they're looking to get started. First question I normally get is, where do I even get my seeds? How do I get started with growing something, getting my hands on seeds or maybe even clones? Well, there's lots of different questions you can ask yourself. You could say, should I start with seeds versus clones? In my opinion, if you're growing your own and you're starting out, start with seeds. There are also things that are called feminized seeds that you can see here, right here, feminized seeds. Those are seeds that have been grown in a certain condition in order to make sure that they're going to be a female plant. So you can't consume the female from a medicinal perspective. you only want to consume what comes off of the female plant. The male plant is not useful from a production perspective. The male plant is there to help breeders breed and create more plants, but in different strains. But you don't get anything medicinal from the male plant. It's the female plant that you get your sustenance from. So you want to try to get feminized seeds. That's what we recommend for people that are part of our Grow Our Own coaching program. We recommend that you get feminized seeds. There are also things that are called autoflowers. You could play around with those, but I don't recommend that for beginners. For beginners, just get natural feminized seeds. Stay away from autoflowers. Then you want to make sure that you're picking the right strain, and that you're picking a strain that's good for beginners, because there are different types. And then you got to find out where to find them. And also it's good to figure out how to store them, because you invest in your seeds. You want to keep a little seed library. There's a specific way to make sure that you store your seeds so that they actually germinate and are fruitful for you when it's time to grow them. The other thing that you should consider so I was talking about, picking the right strain when you're a beginner. When you're a beginner, there are certain strains out there that just are easier. They allow for mess ups and for fluctuations in your temperature. And there are certain strains out there that are very finicky and picky and will get you in trouble. So stick with a strain that is easy to learn off of. Those strains are things like Northern Lights. That's the first plant that I grew. Is a great beginner strain. There's another, and it's got a nice average THC and kind of, feeling to it. Then there's also Granddaddy Purple. Granddaddy Purple is a different type of strain that has a heavier hit to it when you're really trying to kind of get that sedated feeling. And then there's also Cannatonic. Cannatonic is a great strain for beginners. It's great for medicinal purposes. It has a higher than normal CBD cannabinoid level. So Cannatonic, Northern Lights. There are a couple others. We have this seed selection guide that we use, and in that guide, we kind of go through each of the ones that we recommend. But basically, as I said, just make sure that if you're trying to do this for the first time, stick with feminized seeds. If you're looking to try to find seeds, you can go to a local dispensary in your state. If your state is one of those states that allows for home cultivation and you have dispensaries, you could go to a dispensary, and some of them, not all of them, but some of them actually sell seeds. So you could start there. If you also want to try to grow you want to try to get it from online, there are resources to buy them from online retailers, seed breeders as well. What I will recommend, though, is that you make sure that you buy your seeds from a reputable seed bank. Don't just find somebody on Instagram that says they have seeds. You want to buy your seeds from someone that's got what's called a germination rate guarantee. A germination rate guarantee. This germination rate guarantee is something that they'll provide to you when you purchase the seeds. And a germination rate is, you may have 10 seeds in your hand. You throw all 10 seeds in some dirt, and only maybe 6 of them pop and a plant comes up. That means 6 out of 10 plants germinated. You have a 60% germination rate. Most of these seed breeders will give you something that's close to 80s or 90s, the reputable breeders. So look for that. There are 3 different examples that I show here on the screen. There's a company called I Love Growing Marijuana. They have a lot of good educational content, and they also sell seeds as well. There's Grower's Choice Seed. I use them a lot. And there's also Pacific Seed Bank. All provide germination rate and also give you a delivery guarantee as well to make sure that you're actually going to get your product when you order it. So that's how you can get started. Go out, find some seeds that are good for beginners, and go online and purchase. The next thing is, how many plants should I grow? Now, some people just say, I'm going to grow as many as I can. I mean, there are plant count limits, right? Don't go there. Don't go in that direction just quite yet. So depending on your state, every state has a certain amount of plants that people can grow. Some are 3, some are 6, some are 12, some are as small as 2, unfortunately, which is okay, because if you can grow each plant as big as possible and create a nice shape, we can work with it. So what you want to start with is figuring out what's your plant count limit for your state to be legal. I don't want to pretend as if this is the risk engineer in me coming back. I don't want to pretend as if there aren't going to be situations where they're going to start looking into home cultivators and making sure that they're following guidelines. So when we put together this framework to teach people how to grow their own, we're aware of the legalities and trying to make sure that we're putting people on the right path so that they don't wind up getting in trouble sometime later. So you need to know what your state's plant count limit is. In Massachusetts, where I am, Each adult can grow 6 plants. If you've got multiple adults in a house, you can grow up to 12 plants. So if you've got 2 adults, 12 plants. If you've got 3 adults, 12 plants. You can't go any more than that. Just 1 adult, just 6 plants. So you got to start there. So then some people may say, all right, so I can grow, I'm the only adult in my house. I'm in Massachusetts and I can grow 6 plants. Sweet, I'm going to grow 6 plants. No, pump the brakes, hold on. If you can get in trouble growing too many plants. One, you're using too much energy, too much water, more water than you might need to, getting more soil than you might need to, having more equipment than you might need to, having to spend more time than you might need to. So we promote the idea of growing smaller amounts of plants so that you don't get overwhelmed, and growing them as big as possible. That's what we do at Trella. We grow each plant as big as possible, max out these plant count limits. The question that you need to ask yourself, as I can show on the screen, this is actually a tool, a worksheet, a calculator that we provide to the members of the Grow Our Own Challenge to help them work their way through this so they don't have to pull out a calculator and do it themselves. But I'll just briefly walk you through the kind of the thought process for those of you that are more the DIY type and want to dig into this. The first question we ask ourselves is, how much do we typically consume on a certain time frame? So here we say, how much do you consume per week? Let's say I consume 1 ounce per week. And then the next question is, how much do you plan to yield per plant? And that could be questionable for you because you may not know how to grow and you don't know what to expect. So we give you some guidance. The guidance that we give is, assume that you're going to be able to do anywhere from 5 ounces to 10 ounces per plant when you're just starting out, just beginning. If you're feeling very confident, put in 10 ounces. If you're not feeling very confident, start with 5. So now you know, all right, how much can I get per plant? Because that math will help you to figure out how much you need to actually grow. The next question is the time frame. I mean, you don't just put your plants in the ground and you're able to consume them the next day. This takes time. So you have to account for the time factor as well. So we say, how long will it take you to harvest harvest this grow? And we recommend that you use anywhere between, if you're trying to grow them as big as possible, anywhere between 4 months to about 5 months. You can even maybe do it in 3 months if you're really skilled and really good at plant training. So the goal is to have as many harvests per year, but if you're just starting out, stick with 5. The next thing we look at, now that we've kind of gone through that first part of how much do we consume and how much do we plan to harvest each cycle, is, all right, well, what are the results? How many plants do you need to keep up with with your needs? And in this case, you really only need 2 plants because you're going to be able to get 20 ounces out of each of them. That'll last you out over time. If you're only consuming 1 ounce per week, it'll last you enough so that you don't run out. The next thing that you want to consider is this within your legal limit? Again, I'm gonna harp on that because I want to make sure that people are aware that you can't just go willy-nilly and start growing a bunch of plants and feel like you're covered by the law. You do need to consider your plant count limit, and you also need to consider what's called your legal possession limit. That legal possession limit varies, of course, by state. In Massachusetts, we're allowed to have on our possession, if I'm driving around or walking around, I'm allowed to have 1 ounce on me in my pocket or in my purse. If I'm at home, I'm allowed to have no more than 10 ounces in my home at one time. So you might be looking at this and saying, well, Aja, if you're only allowed to have 10 ounces and you're harvesting 20 ounces, what are you doing? Well, you can give it to someone else, they can hold it for you, or you can give it to them permanently and let them consume it themselves. That's what we call overgrowing and sharing. Overgrow and share. You'll hear me talk about that if you follow on social media. It's a community thing. You don't just hoard your cannabis, you share it. It's more fun that way. Consider that as well. The next thing we need to find out is how much space do I need for the amount of plants that I plan to grow. And again, you want to consider the amount of size of that plant, how much you're trying to harvest, etc. So what we do is we have another tool that helps us figure out how big will the plant be for the amount of yield that I need, and then how much space will I need and how big does my grow space need to be. So the first question we ask is, if I'm looking to yield 10 ounces per plant, and this is very simple. What our members do is they go in and they just drop in the number 10 and then boop, up pops the result, 5.9 square feet. So the math is taken care of for you. You don't have to really worry about that. So if I'm looking to get 10 ounces out of this plant, it needs to be about 6 square feet. And that's length by width, 6 square feet of space I'll need for that plant if I wanted to get that yield. So if I'm looking to grow 2 plants in that space, that means I need 12 square feet, and you need to enclose that space. So a lot of people will use grow tents. Grow tents come in fixed sizes. You can't just get, a grow tent that's exactly the dimensions that you want. They usually come in fixed sizes. So we also share with our members what's the best size for that. So for 12 square feet, you can go out and get a 4x4 grow tent. So if you're thinking you need a lot of space for this, you don't. A 4-foot by 4-foot space will give you enough to consume 1 ounce per week, and you don't have to go to the dispensary. Most people won't have to go to the dispensary with that amount of cannabis coming in. And you'll be able to gift it and provide it to other people. That 4x4 grow tent is actually 16 square feet. So you'll have a little bit of extra space to get access to your plants and to get equipment. You can go bigger if you want. These are minimums, but this is just a baseline for you, so you can kind of get started understanding what's the smallest grow tent that I need to get. All right, then you need to find out what type of equipment do you need. And this is where people get hung up. They get hung up, and we try to walk people through, what do you exactly need? Don't get overwhelmed by all the different choices. There are so many manufacturers selling so many different types of things. You really only need the basics, especially if you're learning. But the first question you have to find out is, where are you growing? Are you growing outdoors? Do you have access to an outdoor environment? Do you have access to that outdoor environment year round? If not, do you have a greenhouse that maybe you can use? In my case in Massachusetts, we got a small amount of window to grow outdoors during the summer, and then the rest of it is indoors. So the majority of my growing experience is indoor growing. I do outdoor sometimes from summer to summer, but the majority of my experience is indoor growing. So you need to figure out, what do you need to grow? And we focus on grow our own, because the majority of people don't have access to a lot of land, or if they do, they don't want neighbors looking, they don't want people in all up in their business, for whatever reason that might be. So they might want to grow indoors. So just move this out of the way, make sure that you can see. One of the things that you need to do when you're growing indoors is you have a goal. You need to recreate the sun, the air, and the earth. You had it outdoors, but you don't have those things anymore. So you got to recreate the sun, which means you need to get some sort of grow light. So I'll share a little bit more about different types of grow lights on the next couple of slides. Then you need to recreate the air. You have to create a nice environment for that plant to thrive in. That means looking at temperature, humidity, amounts of CO2. And then you need to recreate the earth. You want to recreate the earth. So that could be whether or not you're going to grow in soil to contain the roots, or if you're going to use hydroponics, which is another soil-less type of growing method to provide nutrients to those roots as well, similar to what the earth does. So a lot of people might think, oh my goodness, that's a lot. That's going to cost you a lot. Well, it depends on your budget. You can get a basic setup and start growing for about $400. That's kind of, your lower tier products, but it will work. You'll get something. If you want a good setup to get kind of, average, above average results, look at spending about $400 to about $1,000 for your home cultivation setup. And then you can really go, if you have the budget and you have, the capacity, you can really go all out and spend $5,000, $10,000 on a setup. Not necessary though. I say people should probably aim for that $400 to that $1,000 range. It'll get you what you need to get started and to get good results as well. All right. So I see that there are some questions. I'm going to try to hold all those to the end, if you don't mind. So please.
That's fine. We'll go
bear
through
with
them
me.
as soon as you're done with the presentation. We'll go to with screens and we'll answer some of those questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Talisha. Appreciate that. When you're looking at all these things that you need, you can go online and just Google grow equipment, and lists will pop up. I mean, we have a list as well that helps us through our Grow Our Own challenge. You need to, though, look at those lists and then prioritize, what do you really need for your situation, because not everybody needs the same thing. And you also want to keep in mind that you want to start with a basic setup. So what we do is we have a list of all the different types of things that you might potentially need. We have some options. So if you're looking at this checklist, the goal is not to check off every box on this list. No, you don't need to check off every box on this list. As you work through it, you'll see that there are things that are optional. There are things that are, kind of great to add on if you really need to, but you don't need everything on this list. So now let me jump into lights a little bit. I want to drill down into some of the things, some of the equipment that you're going to wind up spending most of your money on, and it will have the biggest impact on what you're growing and how you're growing. The first is there's all different types of lighting systems out there. There are what's called HPS, which is high pressure sodium, CMH, ceramic metal halide. There are fluorescent lights out there. Those are the more old school traditional lights that first came out. And then you have LEDs, which are the more modern, more lights that are coming out. And you can, I did a rank of performance, upfront cost, energy loss, and lifespan. So you can see here that everything that's kind of colored in green is the one that kind of has it's the one that's got, it wins in that column. So from a performance perspective, LEDs are winning. 10 years ago, would not have said that, but the technology has really, really come a long way. And we recommend people go out and get themselves what's called a dimmable full spectrum LED. Dimmable full spectrum LED. That's the best, in my opinion, and light that you can get out there. It gives you a lot of flexibility. It covers you across the entire plant's life cycle. And you can really play around with that dimmer and save on energy costs, even more so than what I'm showing here. So the other great benefit of LEDs is that they're low on energy consumption. That's going to play a huge role. I mean, if the goal is to grow your own to save money so you don't have to spend it at a dispensary, you don't want to wind up getting an energy bill that's out of control, because that's going to kind of, deter you from wanting to continue to grow. So LEDs are really great from a energy loss perspective. And then lifespan, they last for a very long time when compared to some of the other lighting fixtures out there. So dimmable full spectrum LEDs are recommended. There's a variety of manufacturers out there. It really depends on your budget. So you can look at reviews and see kind of what makes sense for you. The next is recreating the air and the elements. So that's a plethora of things. That's maintaining the right temperature during the day, during the night, and that also changes throughout the plant's life cycle. What it needs when it's young is different than when it needs when it's a lot older. So you need to consider temperature. You also need to consider the humidity. Humidity is key. A lot of people forget about humidity. Humidity drives really a lot of how quickly the photosynthesis in the plant and how easily it's able to kind of breathe and exhale. So if it's too humid, it can't breathe. It slows down the whole photosynthesis process and you wind up having issues with your plant. If it's too dry, similar thing will happen. So you really need to stay on top of that humidity. You also need access to fresh air. You don't want to, if you grow this in a basement, that's okay, but you might want to have some sort of a vent or a window that allows for fresh, or open a door so that fresh air can go into that space. You can enhance CO2. We don't recommend it for the Grow Our Own challenge. We're just starting out. You don't really need to enhance it. You just need to make sure that you have fresh air. The other thing to consider is circulation, making sure that you got good circulation around that plant. And in that grow space, you don't want stagnant air. You don't want it to be hotter in one space and cooler in another. It creates what are called microclimates that can cause issues as well. You also want to consider that there's a benefit to air circulation. You want a fan in that grow space that's just lightly blowing wind against your plants. And what that does is it mimics the outdoor environment, and the plants are swaying back and forth. And what that's actually doing is it's exercising the plants, and their branches and their structures start to get a little bit beefier. So by the time by the time we're ready to flower and to have those buds form on the plant, those buds are heavy, and to have a stronger plant means you can have more buds on that plant as well. So really key. It's great to kind of exercise the plants. A little bit of stress is good, not too much though. And then odor. A lot of people that want to grow their own, they're concerned about odor. You know, their next door neighbors or you know, their children or whatever it might be. There are ways to control the odor. We cover that as well. But you can go out and you can get odor filters or charcoal odor filters for circulating that air, filtering it out, and getting rid of that smell. And I'm telling you, if you're doing a really good job growing, when it's time to flower, that smell, I love it. I don't filter my odor, much to my wife's chagrin. I don't filter my odor. I like that. That's part of the fun for me. But if you need to filter it, you can filter it. All right. Moving on to to creating the earth, how to recreate the earth. So there are two different ways you can do that. I talked about hydroponics. I also talked about soil. So for hydroponics, there are lots of different types of hydroponic systems out there. There are what's called ebb and flow, NFT, aeroponic, aquaponics, and also deep water culture. But we're going to really drill down into the deep water culture method. And you can see there's some videos that are trying to run here. I'm in the lab showing you a deep water culture system. Hydroponics are systems where you submerge the roots in water. You can either submerge them in water or spray water at the roots or wash the roots with water. But here, this is deep water culture, which means you got a deep amount of water. The roots are sitting in that water. There's an air stone in there, aerating that water and making sure that the roots have oxygen and that they can uptake the nutrients that are in the water. So that's called deep water culture. There's also recirculating deep water culture, which is a little bit more advanced, but for the interest of time, I'll move on. There's also soil and soil less. So you can buy mixtures. You can get mixtures of soil from a garden supply store or even online. But we recommend that you start with something that's called a soil less mixture. It has soil in it. It's a play on words. Soil, regular soil that you can just find, you know, in a farm somewhere, has a lot of inorganic matter. Soilless mixes have a lot of organic matter. And really the difference is that the soilless mixture here on the right is a lot, it doesn't compact as quickly, it holds a lot more water and it promotes faster growth. So a lot of people like to use soil-less mixes. There's also something called living soil. Living soil is a way to kind of create a completely organic and natural environment for your plants. And there's not fertilizers, you're using compost and a lot of organic matter to really provide the nutrients that your plant needs. And it provides it through the whole plant cycle. So we also talk about living soil. If you're interested in doing this in a clean, healthy, organic way, living soil is what you're going to want to go after. Okay, so then the next thing to consider is how long is this process going to take me? Because these are babies now. You got to walk these little plants through all the different life cycle stages that it's going to go through. It's going to start with germination when it's just a little seed and it pops. Depending on how you do it, it can take you 14 to 21 days. That also depends on how good the quality of the seeds as well. Better quality, quicker germination rate. The next phase is the vegetation phase, and that can vary. That really depends on you. The vegetation phase is the phase where the plant is building its structure. It's building all of its branches. It's growing taller. And then you're training it to grow wider, and you're building out the structure. And that can take a variety of time. It depends on what you're trying to do. If you want more yield, you want more vegetation. So if you use certain techniques, you can do it faster, but that will vary. The vegetation time will vary. The next thing that's going to happen is the flowering phase. This is where on Instagram, everybody shows pictures of their flowers. But in my opinion, the work that really takes place is during the vegetation phase. I digress. The flowering period will last depending on how the type of cannabis that you're growing, the specific strain that you're growing. Each strain has a kind of genetically predetermined flowering amount of time that it will take for those flowers to fully develop in order for you to harvest and to get a good quality result from it. So for Northern Lights, it might be something like 60 days, or for Granddaddy Purple, it might be 65 or 70 days. Each strain will vary. You want to know that when you pick it. And then you need to harvest that material. It's not just about growing it. You got to get it off the plant. You need to clean it up. You need to dry it, let it dry. And you also need to let it cure as well. So that can take about 10 to 14 days, depending on how you set that up. So this whole cycle, if you do it quickly with a short vegetation time, it could take you 3 months. But if you want to grow the plant a little bit bigger, it might take you 4 months or maybe even 5 months, depending on your plant training skill level. All right, let's move on. How do you maintain the health of the plant? I talked about all these different life cycles and the equipment, and there are settings, and you need temperature, humidity, CO2. All right, well, what exactly are you aiming for in regards to the right temperature, the right level of humidity, the right amount of CO2? Those things change during the plant's life cycle. So again, there's lots of information online. You can go online and find all this information and gather it up. We put it all together in a nice kind of reference sheet, what we call our plant care cheat sheet, that helps everybody know what they need to do depending on what stage they're at in their plant's life cycle. So pretty handy. But what I want to point out here for everybody is use a grow journal. If you're DIY doing this by yourself, or if you decide to work with somebody or to do an educational program of some sort, whether it be with us or someone else, use a grow journal. Please, please, please document. People don't like to document. I don't really like it either. I have to force myself to do it, but you need to document for 2 reasons. One, if you happen to have an issue and you're not getting what a yield from your plant, your plants are dying, and you go to someone, or you go online and you go on a forum and you ask questions about, well, what should I do? People are going to ask you questions. Well, what did you feed it? How often did you feed it? When did you water it? And if you didn't write that down, you can't go back and reference that. So that's lost information. Now, on the flip side is when you had a banger of a harvest. I mean, you got a lot of yield, it tastes great, it smelled great, and you're like, I need to repeat this. I want to recreate this experience. If you didn't write down what you did, you're not going to be able to recreate it. And trust me, it's very important that you keep the same temperature and the same feeding schedule and the same amount of nutrients so that you get that same result. So document, please. Get yourself a grow journal of some sort. You can use an Excel spreadsheet. You can write it in a notepad. We have a grow journal that we give our members, but no matter how you do it, write it down somewhere so that you can go back to it and reference it later and get better and learn from it. Then here's another question is, if I only grow 2 plants, am I going to get enough out of it? Well, how do you get the most from each plant? There are things called plant training techniques, and that's when you're spreading that structure out, that plant structure out, mainly during the vegetation phase, to get it to be as big as possible so that you get as many branches that have light on them as possible, because every branch that gets access to great light will become a great place for flowers to bud. I mean, that's how you increase your yield. So you can use techniques like scrog, topping, super cropping, and even something called a low stress training technique, which we prefer. The reason why we prefer this one is because the other methods, scrog, topping, super cropping, are what are called high stress plant training methods. And they can really, slow down the growth. For example, stress, there are all different types of stress when it comes to plants. There's what's called abiotic stress or biotic stress. Some stress is good. Just like in life, when you're working out or when you're trying to accomplish something, you have to put there's a little bit of a stress. When you're doing something you've never done before, there's a little bit of anxiety, but you don't want to do too much. There's always kind of the right balance of stress that you should be applying when you're trying to push yourself or push your plants to the next level. So too much stress will actually slow down the growth rate, cause your plants to actually stop growing for a couple of days while it figures out what's going on, where should it redirect the nutrients, what should it do next, and then it starts to grow again. So you could lose 2 or 3 days from what's called topping your plant, from cutting your plant. So we talk about all these different types of plant training techniques, and then you can decide what works best for you, but we recommend and really go in on a low stress training technique. So the reason why is because it's pretty simple to do. All you need to do is tie down the plant. You can do it in a complex manner, or you could do it in a very simple manner. This manner here, in my opinion, is a bit complex because you're tying down each individual branch. But what we do is we actually go back here. What we do is we actually only tie off at a couple of locations. So we pull that main stem down and we pull it slowly over time. Right here, I have like a pulley system, and we get into this in a lot more detail, but I have a pulley system where I'm hooking this onto something below on the ground, and then I pull on that string and it slowly pulls the plant down, and then the pulley locks it in place. So I just have to go in there and just pull my string a little bit, and boom, I'm done. And that keeps the plant staying down so that I can spread those branches out and make the most out of that individual plant. So that's what we like to do. At Trella, we like to do low stress training. It also helps you to maintain the height of the plant so that you can use your space more efficiently, and maybe even get into stacking your plants on multiple levels. So you could have one plant on one level and then control that height with low stress training, and then have another plant on an upper level and control that height. So when you get to having a 4x4 grow tent and you want to bring more plants in, you may not need to go get another grow tent. You might be able to set up a shelving system in there and just double up what you can grow in that same space. So wanted to make sure that we showed everybody that. All right, now, how do you succeed? How do you succeed at this? How do you make sure that you have what I call a growth mindset, And this is really key. When you're doing anything for the first time, it takes time. It takes, a level of effort. You're going to start off slow. You're going to learn some things. You're going to maybe have some setbacks. You're going to keep going and get better at it over time. Nothing that we do that has any real value is overnight. Nothing that has real value is overnight. So when it comes to learning how to grow your own cannabis and to grow it efficiently, to have quality and to have consistent results, it's going to be something that you need to practice at, you need to get better at, and that you need to be patient with yourself about as well. It's fun, trust me. Once you get your hands wrapped around this, the basics of it, which you can do, and we can help you with that, you're going to start having a good time with it. But you also have to understand that there might be times when you have a setback, and it's all good because you're doing all this for some sort of a goal. There's some reason that you decided that you wanted to grow your own, whether that's freedom from traditional medicine, having the ability to control your own supply and not have to go to somebody else for it, not have to worry about what you're consuming and whether or not, there's mold or pesticides or something else in your cannabis. If you're looking at it from a commercial perspective, you've got those type of goals where you're trying to make a positive impact and also create a legacy for yourself. You're trying to heal people, or it can be any other type of goal, but you do have a goal that you're working towards. And it's important to, one, know what that goal is before you get started, because if you don't know the why, it's going to be very easy for you to get, overwhelmed, get frustrated, and then unfortunately stop and quit. And I'm telling you, we really need to, especially the younger generation, we need to learn how to grow our own, not just cannabis, but our own food, everything. It really creates sovereignty. If you go back in history over time, there have been lots of cases where you weren't allowed to grow certain things and people starved to death, and that was used as a form of aggression and terrorism. So, the risk engineer in me is like, please don't quit on this. It's important. It's very important that you have that freedom to grow your own and that you have that knowledge base to be able to grow your own food when and if you need to. So don't get overwhelmed. Get some support with this, because I went through all this very quickly. And there's more to it, obviously. I mean, we only have a certain amount of time, but you're going to need support. The plants grow over a certain amount of time. There's going to be some days when things work out well, some days when they don't. Don't do it on your own. Join a community of some sort, get some support, find other people that want to grow and that want to, help you with this and get that support. What we did to create a support system for people that need that and that really want that support is a grow coaching program. This isn't just an educational online program where you take a couple of courses and boom, you have some sort of certification. No. We're going to be working together very, very closely. So what you're going to get is one-on-one virtual grow coaching with me. So we're going to jump on once a month, jump on a call, and I want you to show me your plants, show me your grow tent. If you can't do it while we're on the call, you can take pictures in advance, because I love that. And that's how I can troubleshoot and really help people stay out of trouble and have success and make sure that you're on the right path. And also, it's time for me to answer questions that you might be shy about asking in our community app. We also have a community space. We have our own Trella Grow Our Own community app. That's what you're looking at right here. on the bottom of the screen. This is our community space. We have a learn section. We also have a community section where the chat is held, where people can share ideas, share discount codes, all that type of stuff. But we also have, and we have competitions too, so you can win prizes in competition. But the real core of this, the real core that gets you started is what's called our 6-week Grow Our Own Challenge. And what it is it's a guide that will get you through everything you need to get from, step one, point A or step A all the way to Z. And it includes over 6 hours of educational content. And we break that down into 6 different modules. So we say 6 weeks because we have 6 modules. So on week 1, we recommend that you complete module 1. On week 2, we recommend that you complete module 2. So you watch some videos, you get some instruction on what to do. There's some resources for you maybe to download, and then you do that activity and you move on to the next week. And we have check-in points to make sure that you're understanding the content and that you're doing well. And we walk you through all of this, and it's we also even make sure that we talk about plant training too, so that you also know what to do to get the most out of that, out of each individual plant. So on top of that, you're also going to get some access to some additional resources. You'll get the grow equipment checklist, you'll get that plant care cheat sheet, and the seed selection guide. All of these things are things that you download, you have access to. Even the videos that I was talking about, all of that, you can download that and maintain access to that whenever you need. If you feel like you want to do this in 4 weeks versus 6 weeks, you can do that. If you feel like 6 weeks is a little bit too aggressive, I understand it might take you 8 weeks. For example, we had our launch the first time was in December. So obviously we had some time for the holidays. I slowed down a little bit. Clients all slowed down and gave each other space to celebrate the holidays. And then we started it up again. So for some people, it took them 8 weeks to get started. It's all good. As long as you're progressing, that's what this is about. That's what success is, in my opinion, is just constant progress towards a set goal. So identify the goal, set up the steps to get that, to maintain progress. And that's what we're doing in this. So we've got references and guidelines to help you through all of that. And then we also include, for those of you that get a good foundation on how to grow your own, and you're doing some of those manual plant training techniques and you're getting good at that, and you're like, all right, I want to step it up. I want to, offset my time and maybe reduce my time spent doing all of this. I want some additional support from a tech perspective. Then you can, go out and get a Trella Grow LST model, and we offer every member that's part of this, they get a $300 rebate off of their Trella Grow LST model. So when you're ready to move into that next phase and to get into that advanced plant training, you can do that at a discounted rate. So this all comes with an investment. I mean, if you're learning how to do a life-changing skill, like learning how to grow your own cannabis, learning how to remove yourself from depending on a dispensary, learning how to understand what you're consuming and to, have control of your health and your medicine, it comes at an investment. You got to give something to get something. So we put a value behind everything that we're doing. And the original value for this is $1,497, which gets you 3 months of that coaching access. You get access to the 6-week Grow Your Own Challenge, and you get access to that community app and that support system and that space and those one-on-one calls for 3 months. If after 3 months, we do a check-in and you decide that you want to continue, then you just continue for $297 a month after. But that's our original value price. What we are doing for those that are on this call that are part of the 10K project community is doing a nice discounted rate for those individuals. But we do have limited spots available, because if I'm doing one-on-one coaching, I only have so much time that I can actually dedicate to this before I wind up getting overwhelmed and I'm not providing everybody with the value and good quality like I really want to. So there is a limitation on how many slots are available for this. So if you want to lock down a discounted price for only $497, so at $497 upfront, you'll get access for 2 months. And then after that, if you want to continue, you can continue for $147 a month after that. So if you do this for an entire, let's say the longest growth cycle that we typically see is 6 months. If you do this for the entire 6-month duration, that total investment winds up being about, a little bit over $1,000. Some people spend, $300 or $500, even $1,000 a month at a dispensary or over a few months' time. So you'll make that money back, and you're also getting it at a nice discounted rate, and you're getting not just education, but you're getting support and coaching on top of that as well. So if you're looking to take advantage of this because, again, like I mentioned, I don't have a lot of availability. I only have limited spots available. To hold that spot at a discounted rate, you can simply go to this link. It's the bit.ly link, and then it's apply, grow our own. So you can either type that in somewhere, or I don't know, Talisha, if you're able to send that out, that'd be awesome too.
Yes, I've been in the
But
chat a
there's a
couple
link,
times.
or
Can
you can
send that
simply
out?
just scan our QR code. Sweet, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So what you're going to do is you're just going to apply. You're just going to apply because we don't know yet if this is right for you. We don't know if your why is strong enough. We don't know if you have the time. We don't know if you have really the need to grow your own. So what we want to do is we're going to get on what's called a discovery session, where I ask you about your grow goals. What are you trying to accomplish? Is it for a commercial perspective? I mean, we've got clients that are in this just because they want to have a better understanding from an industry perspective so that they can better their chances of having a nice sustainable cannabis business. And we have people that do this because they want to stop spending so much money at a dispensary. I want to know what that's about. I want to know what your why is so I can make sure that I'm supporting you in the best way. And then during this discovery session, you schedule it. So when you apply, you'll be sent a link or it'll send you to a link to schedule your discovery session. If you don't schedule your discovery session, you haven't applied. You haven't really locked in that discounted rate. So make sure that you're doing that. Make sure that you're scheduling that discovery session. And then finally, make sure that you attend it and that you give yourself some time and some space to actually be present in the session, because it's really all about you. It's about trying to make sure that I have full understanding of what you need. This earpiece will not stay in. Trying to have full understanding of what you need to make sure that I can support you in the best way. So make sure that you attend that discovery session and that you are present and ready, and that if there's anybody else that's going to actually be a part of this, because some people work in partnerships and in tandem. I have one client that's actually two people that are working together. Have that person on the call too, so that they can ask questions, that they can feel comfortable as well. So if you have other decision makers, make sure that you invite them to the call. And together we'll talk about what the program is, we'll talk about your grow goals, and we'll make a decision on whether or not this is right for you. But you got to take that first step just to apply, just to learn. So there's no obligation at that point. We won't make a decision until after the discovery session. So I would recommend, if you're interested in this, if you want to learn more, go ahead, apply and get those spots available, because we only have a limited amount of those, and eventually I'll be modifying this offering to something that's a little bit more time efficient, so get in while you can, please. And I really look forward to working with those of you that are feeling led, feeling empowered, and feeling positive about the opportunities when it comes to removing your dependency on a dispensary or a supplier, or creating an opportunity in this cannabis space, but making sure that you're doing it from a positive perspective and not just becoming another big pharma parasite. So go ahead, apply, and lock in that discounted rate. With that being said, I'm open for questions. We can go in. I'll make sure that I stay and answer them all, please.
Oh, great. Let's get started here. You can just
Water after all that.
drink. If you can stop your presentation so people can see you here, so we can have the face-to-face. We'll
Sure.
start with Miss Jackie here. She said, first of all, she said your presentation was so thorough, and she is a proud investor of Trella Technologies, so we appreciate that as well. I know I am as well, Miss
Yes.
Jackie. So she says, is
Thank you,
the
Jackie.
program a lifetime access? So once you get into the program, do you get lifetime access to it beyond that 6-week period?
Got you. So first, Jackie, thank you for shouting us out on social. You share everything. I appreciate. I really appreciate that. Wanted to let you know that it's noted and appreciated for spreading the word. To answer your question, so you get access to all of the curriculum. You can download everything and keep it on your own PC. And then you can also download all of the references and the resource materials as well. They're in PDF form. You can get access to all that. So what you can do is you can start with the upfront investment, see if it makes sense for you, download all that stuff. And if you decide, hey, I don't want to continue for whatever reason that might be, you still have access to all that information. So it is kind of like lifetime access. What you will lose access to is the one-on-one coaching, and then also the community app access as well, that community engagement that requires a recurring membership for that.
And she also asked, are you planning on having an affiliate program in the future?
Yes, actually, we just actually, if you're on Instagram, you may have seen that we just posted a post about our first, what I'll say is affiliate partnership with another woman that's in the cannabis space, the Dank Duchess. She's going to be bringing in some educational expertise and adding some curriculum to the Grow Our Own community. She's a hashish expert, a hashish expert. I always have a hard time saying that, pardon me. But she's going to bring that in. And then we also have some other people that are going to be shouting us out and giving us opportunities to spread the word. So yes, that will be coming. But what we do we like to start with people that actually are a part of the program so that they can speak to it from an experience perspective. So, go through the program, see if it makes sense for you, have some success, and then you can go out there and spread the word and then also get compensated for your time and your energy. So thank you for that question. That was great.
Anonymous asks, does the soil affect the plant's smell and taste?
Yes, very much so. So you'll notice that some people will say a cannabis plant grown in soil versus a cannabis plant grown in hydroponics will have a slightly different taste. There are some people who prefer one versus the other. A lot of people say soil tastes better. Like outdoor grown in the sun is obviously the most efficient from a growing perspective. Not everybody can do that. So if you have to grow indoors, you can grow indoors with soil or a soil-less mix. But sometimes when you bring soil-less mixes indoors, you can have issues with pests. So you have to be extra clean and extra careful that you don't bring pests inside. But yes, the soil, the type of nutrients, the type of fertilizer that you use, the roots are going to pull all that up, and that's going to affect the taste. And there are other things too. It's not just the soil, the lights, when you harvest, how often, the types of fertilizer you're using, all those things will impact taste. Yes.
Mhm. Dimitri says, thank you for such a great presentation. It was very tactical information. He says he lives in New York City and interested in growing for commercial use. Any advice?
Awesome. Yeah, so my advice is, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, is to learn the plant, get comfortable with the plant, understand what it takes to grow the plant. There are people, and there are people out there that are talking from a perspective you could tell they don't understand the plant. They think that this is something that can be bottled, and like the CBD market, for example. There's a lot of just CBD products out there. You see a lot of them in stores. Well, you're taking parts of the plant, discarding a good amount of it, and a lot of that has value, and then trying to bottle it and sell it to make money. That will last for a certain amount of time. But if you're trying to be sustainable, if you want longevity, and you want to have a good brand as well, the best thing you need to do is to fully understand the plant so you can learn to grow it, take some time learning how to grow the plant, take some time learning how to process the plant. And that's why the Dank Duchess will be coming on to help us with the processing aspect of learning. And then you'll have a much better understanding of what it takes from a expense perspective, from an operational perspective, a marketing perspective. All of those things you'll learn, and you'll be ahead of your competition. Well, at least those people that try to just jump right into it because they saw it as a money-making opportunity. So that's my recommendation. And I also recommend co-ops, a co-op business structure. So partner up with people because you're stronger with more people than just by yourself.
That's great. And thank you again for the wonderful presentation. It was very tactical. I love how you went through each stage and there's a lot to consider. So my question would be like, in that 6-week challenge, are you going through that entire process to say people to know, like, maybe this is how I can do it as a precursor and just kind of stepping them through that? Is that what the 6 weeks challenge really helps them with?
Well, at the end of the 6-week challenge, and I can't believe I forgot to mention this. At the end of the 6-week challenge, the goal is for you to be growing a plant. So you're going to germinate your seed at week 5. Week 5, that is the time where I'm instructing you on what to do to actually start your first seed. So we walk you through how to select all the things that I talked about, but we go through it in more detail. So how to select your seeds, how to find the equipment and to figure out what you need. I give you examples of different types of equipment with Amazon and links and all that type of stuff so that you can just go out and purchase what makes sense for your budget. And then I walk you through how to set up your grow space. And then we talk about cannabis education and learning about the plant life cycle so you know what to expect as your plant starts to grow. And then week 5, it's time to grow. And that's the exciting week. We're going to germinate those plants. We're going to get started. And then in week 6, we kind of wrap it all up and we talk about plant training techniques so that you understand what you need to do to make the most out of that plant. So yeah, this is about action. This isn't about just giving you information and going, good luck. This is about walking you each week and even during those coaching calls, making sure that you're staying on top of it and that you're making progress and not getting stuck and not getting overwhelmed. So yeah, thank you very much for that question.
I wanted to make sure, like, this is where we go into it, because I see all the, all your posts, and I read all the information that you provided to us, and it was really intense. So I think that's a great aspect that it does. It's very vocational as well as educational. So that is a great part of the 6-week challenge. So we have another question here from Kenneth Williams. He says he needs you to reach out to Daryl Addison at torpedopot.com to see if there's some synergy. He said his company is a self-watering planters that produce an enormous amount of product, and his emphasis is on food, but his approach is to grow everything. So, and he gave his email.
Yeah,
here.
excellent. That would be awesome.
If you want to provide your email in the chat, so that can help, and everybody can get that information.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll put my email in the chat right now. So it's Asia@Trella.io. And I just put it in there now. So, well, it actually went to the whole.
Yep.
Send it to everyone.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Did you lose me for a second?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there it is. It's Asia@Trella.io. It's in there for everyone now.
Yes. Well, thank you again, Ms. Asia. This is very wonderful to see you again, and thank you for all the information. So we will also be promoting you far and wide here at the 10K and everywhere we can. So we'll be like Miss Jackie, just sharing you all over the place.
Yeah, I really appreciate all the support from the 10K project community. Mad peace and love to everybody, and please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions.
Well, we will see some of you tomorrow at our Bet on Black pitch at 8 o'clock. So until then, we'll have a great night, everybody, and see you soon. Bye.
All right. Peace and love, y'all.